Imagine if the worst teachers from the country were gathered in one school. What would happen to the students? That's exactly what happens in today's story. The story begins with a school that had a terrible annual result. The results were so bad that only 12% of the students passed. Because of this problem, the school principal was having a meeting with the academy inspector. The principal couldn't figure out why the results were so poor. They had hired the best teachers in the city, but still, the results were terrible. The students weren't that dumb either. So what went wrong? No one could understand. Things got so serious that the trustees decided if at least 50% of the students didn't pass this year, they would stop funding the school. To prevent the school from shutting down, the principal came up with an idea that no one had ever tried before. They decided to hire the worst teachers from the country. Soon, the school welcomed a group of the most stupid and bizarre teachers. These teachers seemed more like circus performers than educated teachers. On their first day, the chaos began. Mrs. Gladys was the first to take a class. As soon as she entered, she started throwing chalk at the students. She seemed to enjoy teasing kids more than teaching them. There was a boy named Bolad in the class who was always late. The moment he entered, Mrs. Gladys launched an attack on him. The students were completely shocked by their new teacher's behavior. Next came Mr. Cutiero. He was so lazy that he arrived 20 minutes late to his class. Then, he spent 10 minutes talking about his name and promptly left the room. He stayed outside for the rest of the period. After that, we meet Polyicon, who was the history teacher. He accidentally walked into the wrong classroom, where a German female teacher was teaching. Polyicon's antics just added to the chaos. The Polyicon teacher thought German teacher was a student and politely asked her to sit down somewhere. Polyicon was obsessed with Napoleon and announced, "I'll only teach about Napoleon." He was completely ignoring the actual syllabus. After a while, the German teacher stood up and said, "Sir, this is not a history class. You're in the wrong room, and by the way, I'm not a student, I'm the teacher." Embarrassed, Polyicon apologized and left the room in a hurry. During lunch, there was still some awkward tension between Polyicon and the German teacher, as their earlier encounter became the talk of the school. Meanwhile, the gym class turned into a disaster. The new gym teacher forced all the students to climb trees. When several kids got hurt, the teacher casually said, "In life, you'll face many challenges. Be strong and overcome them, kids." He acted as if he was training them for forest. Next, it was time for Miss Amina's class. Known for her beauty, she stunned the boys, who couldn't take their eyes off her. When she turned around, some students, including Bolat, were so mesmerized they almost fell off their chairs. Bolat, as usual, arrived late, but seeing the new teacher left him speechless. In the philosophy class, the new teacher placed his coat on a student's head and declared, "From today, this is a coat hanger." He wasted the entire period telling pointless jokes before leaving. Next came the chemistry class. The new teacher, Albert, believed he was no less than Einstein. Trying to impress the students with a scientific experiment, he mixed random chemicals, which filled the entire room with smoke. At the end of the school day, Polyicon once again apologized to the German teacher for his earlier mistake. However, in his clumsy attempt to impress her, he ended up lifting her off the ground because he had no idea how to talk to women properly. For the entire week, these 7 teachers taught the students in the most bizarre and ridiculous ways. By the end of the week, the school was filled with complaints from angry parents. One parent complained, "The chemistry teacher burned my child's back." Another said, "That so-called gym teacher sent my child home with a broken bone." Frustrated, the principal immediately called the academy inspector. But surprisingly, the inspector didn't seem bothered by the school's condition. This made the principal suspicious that something was definitely wrong. The next day, the principal decided to take matters into their own hands. First, they glued the chalk to the table so that Mrs. Gladys couldn't throw it at students. When she tried using the duster aggressively, the spring attached to it made it bounce back, hitting her straight in the face. Next was the lazy teacher's class. As usual, he brought out his picnic chair to relax, but suddenly, small explosions started happening underneath him, forcing him to stand up. When he tried to end the class early, the principal's voice came through a hidden speaker behind the clock, saying, "Asterisk, class isn't over yet. You still have 10 minutes left, so keep teaching." Asterisk. Then came Polyicon's turn. Since he refused to talk about anything other than Napoleon, the principal set up a projector in his classroom to display a different chapter. This way, Polyicon would remember what he was actually supposed to teach. But the real chaos happened during the chemistry class, where our poor man's Einstein always caused trouble. This time, the principal had prepared something special to keep him in check. The principal locked up all the chemicals except water, fearing that the chemistry teacher might blow up the entire school. In Miss Amina's class, students were more focused on her than the lessons. To fix this, the principal turned off the heater in her classroom, forcing her to wear more appropriate clothing. Meanwhile, Polyicon was still trying to impress the German teacher. The other teachers advised him to act like a tough guy to win her over. Believing them, Polyicon decided to take their advice. After school, he took off his shirt and started roaming around like a macho man. When he asked the German teacher out on a date, she was so put off by his ridiculous behavior that she flat out refused. As the school year approached its end, all the teachers grew increasingly worried. The principal's strict rules had stopped the teachers from doing whatever they wanted. But when the academy officer visited and heard about all the complaints, he blamed the principal for interfering too much with the teachers' methods. He declared that the teachers were now free to teach however they liked. This announcement was a dream come true for the teachers. Polyicon fully embraced his Napoleon obsession, even pretending to be Napoleon and endlessly praising him in class. The lazy teacher enjoyed his time as well, not teaching but secretly taking a vacation while pretending to conduct classes remotely. Mrs. Gladys went completely out of control. When a girl in her class complained after her hair was pulled by boy, Gladys solved the problem by cutting the girl's hair off entirely, saying, "Now there's nothing left to pull." Meanwhile, the chemistry teacher, our cheap Einstein, kept mixing random chemicals and causing explosions every other day. Things got even crazier in the philosophy class. The teacher instructed the students to remove their clothes and roam freely, claiming this would help them understand the true essence of nature. He argued, "Animals don't wear clothes, so why should we?" With every teacher doing whatever they pleased, the school descended into total chaos, and the principal was powerless to stop them. The question now was, how much worse could things possibly get? Slowly, news about the teachers spread to the nearby schools. Kids from outside the school began sneaking in, eager to join the class. They wanted to see the glamorous Miss Amina, the chemistry teacher who could make bombs without explosives, and the philosophy teacher's class. Soon, the number of students increased so much that there wasn't even small space left in the classrooms. The school felt more like a carnival than a place for education, buzzing with activity like a crowded marketplace. The eccentric teachers were becoming local celebrities. Polyicon, however, was still dreaming of German teacher. In one outrageous attempt, he arrived on horseback, dressed as a prince, hoping to charm her. But his plan backfired when the horse ran away, leaving him humiliated. With exams approaching, the school finally decided to put an end to the outside students sneaking in. The principal organized a mock test to assess the students' readiness. However, the results were disastrous. Only 3% of the students were expected to pass, an even worse outcome than before. The teachers were completely confused, unsure of what to do or how to explain themselves. The furious principal called the academy inspector for help. The inspector was finally confronted and revealed the shocking truth. He never wanted the plan of hiring bad teachers to succeed. His real goal was for every student to fail so that the principal would be fired, and he could take her position. The inspector had knowingly hired the worst teachers, knowing they wouldn't be able to teach properly. Meanwhile, Polyicon overheard the entire conversation and rushed to inform the other teachers. When they learned that they were considered the worst teachers in city, they were furious and decided to prove everyone wrong. They wanted to show they could succeed against all. Polyicon came up with a risky plan to steal the exam papers and give them to the students. They realized there wasn't enough time to teach the students everything, so this seemed like their only option. The teachers began planning the heist together. They even started plotting how to bypass the security guards to carry out their daring plan. Polyicon was completely disheartened. He felt like a failure after the mock test disaster, and also when he realized they had stolen the wrong exam papers meant for younger students. Convinced there was no hope left, he wrote his resignation letter and handed it to the principal. He decided to leave the school, feeling he could never help the students. As he was leaving the school in despair, the German teacher stopped him. She told him not to run away in fear. "You've come this far, and giving up now would mean failing the students even more," she said. Her words reignited a spark in him. Polyicon realized that he and the other teachers still had a chance, even with just 2 weeks left. He rushed back to the other teachers and shared his determination to try one last time. They all decided to come together and use unconventional methods to prepare the students for the final exams. Instead of focusing on the usual textbook methods, they created fun, interactive, and memorable ways of teaching. Gladison turned history lessons into dramatic storytelling, making the events unforgettable. Cutiron used his laziness as an example to teach time management tricks. Amina motivated students with her charm and pep talks, while Albert used entertaining experiments, this time without explosions, to explain tough science concepts. Even the strict PE teacher helped students focus and manage stress through physical activities. The students were inspired by the teacher's dedication and started putting in extra effort themselves. Slowly but surely, they began to understand and learn. The bond between the teachers and students grew stronger, and hope returned to the school. Finally, exam day arrived. The results would decide not just the students' future, but also the fate of the school. 3 months later, the results were out, and there was a surprising outcome. This time, 49% of the students passed, which was a significant improvement compared to the previous tests. However, it still wasn't enough to avoid the inevitable, as the passing rate was still below 50%. This meant the teachers had failed, and the school would likely have to shut down. Meanwhile, the academy inspector, who had been enjoying his success, celebrated with a drink. However, in this moment, the teachers and students weren't ready to give up just yet. Suddenly, the principal received a letter stating that the school had removed the student who had been consistently failing for many years. As a result, the number of failing students decreased, and now 50% of the students passed. This news spread throughout the school, and a wave of happiness filled the air. Everyone lifted Bolad on their shoulders and danced with joy. The academy inspector's plan was ruined, and finally, Polycon asked the German teacher if there were any teachers at the school who stood out to them, teachers they still remembered. This question made everyone think, and it was a perfect moment to reflect on memorable teachers. Now, a question for you. Are there any teachers in your life who left a lasting impact? If yes, share their names and what made them special in the comments.